We live in a fantastic time. There is only one constant, and this constant is change. What does it mean for cyber risks and the digitalization around the world? Cyber risks are truly global risks. Digitalization is truly global. What can we see for the future? Where are we today? What lessons have we learned over the last couple of months with unprecedented attacks in the space of ransomware? Whether they were driven by private actors or state actors at the end of the day, some of the consequences were absolutely catastrophic. Be aware, do expect the unexpected. That's not anymore a slogan, a phrase. In cyber risk in itself, the past does not necessarily reflect the future. To the contrary, attacks are changing every day, and these attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated, often very much in line with the digitalization itself. Strategically being used, digitalization in itself can have a huge impact for geopolitical changes. It's not just about the aspect of economic gain, but also military power, political power at the end of the day. Where is this going? Let's look into it briefly together.
Hey, this is Rajiv in finance. Call me as soon as you get this. Something's up with my laptop. I can't
Katie, are you on your way into the office? Something's going on with our file servers.
Karen in HR.
Apparently, there's a malware attack targeting our main...
It's ransomware. They're holding us hostage. We're locked out of everything. I can't even check my phone.
For many of you, such sequences could be quite similar, could be quite familiar. Some of you might even have experienced such circumstances at the end. Let's do not underestimate such attacks. They're becoming more frequent, they're becoming more severe. Cyber risks are truly global risks. They are unparalleled, as we will see, in comparison to what we recently have experienced, such as COVID-19. The real virus in itself, there are fundamental differences which we will discuss. Cyber risks are truly board risk in itself because of fiduciary duties. Any director can ultimately become fired, can become hacked due to a cyber attack in itself. Let's have a look briefly around the scope of cyber risks, where these risks are coming from. Contrary to pandemic risk, cyber risk is truly man-made. It's global. It is a risk which can hit anybody in itself. It's highly contagious in itself. It has criminal and often stealing of intellectual property motivation. And it's becoming more and more a geopolitical weapon, which is not focusing alone on the aspects of winning political gain or military gain, but at the end of the day is a huge opportunity for some states to win power in respect of economic growth. The risk in itself, as we see in this particular example, is a global risk. This example shows within hours, within days, a world can be impacted. Not just from the frequency, but also from the severity. Independent of the size of a company, independent of the industry itself, nobody is actually safe when it comes down to cyber risks. And this type of risks have become more and more strategic attacking points for actors. As we have seen over the last couple of months, when we look back into May, we had one of the largest oil pipelines in the US, Colonial, being attacked on a ransomware. Ransomware as a service, to be exact. Then we had another case with JBS, which was happening in May. Again, it was focusing on the aspects of supply chain. And later on, we had Kaseya, a digital manager. So what trend do we see when it comes down to this kind of risk? The trend we truly see at the moment is quite the following. These attacks have become more sophisticated. They become more focused on the supply chain. And they become really issues which potentially, in the worst case, can politically trigger even a war to the extent. We are today in what I call a hidden war, a hidden secret cyber warfare. Such hidden secret cyber warfare can have huge issues on our economy, on our political society, and it leads into connected weapons. Viruses, codes, are massive weapons if they're in the wrong hands. They're massive weapons in various aspects. Digitalization and cyber, they go hand in hand. Why they go hand in hand? Because by using cyber attacks, we can steer, we can impact, we can influence people if it goes in the wrong way. Making the bridge briefly to AI, artificial intelligence, we see a lot of upside when it comes down to developing cyber on the one side, if it's being used in an ethical way. If it's not being used in an ethical way, more in an offensive way rather than in a defensive way, this can be a huge issue, as you will see. We all lived in an unparalleled time over the last couple of months, let's say over the last 18 months. Let's look briefly about the differences between real cyber attacks, real viruses, and the so-called IT virus in itself. We see on this particular graphic in front of us, on the one side, we see the way an attack has developed. You will see immediately it fastly develops. On the other side, on the left side, what we see there is specifically how was the outbreak at the beginning when it came down to COVID-19. There are fundamental differences between the two aspects, and they are the following ones. Cyber risk travel much faster, much quicker. They do not respect borders in the same way as we might be able to contain pandemic risks. Secondly, they're truly global. They're truly, truly global within seconds, within hours, within minutes, or within days. And thirdly, most importantly, they are man-made, whilst pandemic risks are not necessarily being man-made. This has huge impacts on various industries, starting from the financial sector, going into the insurance sector at the end of the day, de facto for any type of industry. We can learn a lot of lessons out of what had happened over the last 18 months, looking at the type of viruses in the real side and looking at IT viruses. The conclusion can only be, don't underestimate either. Think forward, expect the unexpected when it comes down to such attacks or to such viruses in itself. As Marshall McLuhan once said, the famous philosopher, it's the framework which changes within each new technology and not just the picture within the frame. This is certainly the case when you look into digitalization in itself. Digitalization is a disruptive technology. It results into opportunities, huge opportunities, and significant changes. There is only one constant in our lives over the next couple of years, and this means change. We should not make the mistake to underestimate the opportunities on the one side of digitalization, but on the other side, we should neither underestimate the challenges we see when it comes down to cyber risk. Cyber risks and digitalization go hand in hand. AI, robotics, machine learning, just to capture 3 of them, are significant implications on the development and the use of strategically aspects such as cyber risk. In the past, we had the East and we had the West when it came down to military power. We had the challenges on the one side between Moscow and Washington. At the moment, we are in a race when it comes down to disruptive technology among Shenzhen on the one side, and on the other side, obviously, we have Moscow and we have the Silicon Valley, or we have Washington at the end of the day. The fundamental differences from the past into the future when we look at risk. One of the fundamental differences is disruptive technologies, or technologies in itself in the form of digitalization, offer opportunities on the one side for less prosperous states to have a big impact. Cyber risk or cyber opportunities, cyber weapons in the form of warfare, to today have one particular big difference compared to the past of defensive missiles. The one big difference is cyber warfare is often offensive, is often going the offense rather than just defense, whilst in the past, military services were very much driven on the defense side. When it comes down to power, without any doubt, what we see today is the East and the West are being challenged by China. There are other players in the field when it comes down to cyber, a part of Russia, a part of China, a part of the US. We're looking at Israel, hugely technologically successful. We're looking, however, at other dark horses in the form of North Korea on the one side, and on the other side, obviously, of Iran. All of these parties and many other states are today involved in defensive and offensive warfares at the end. We are already, to a certain degree, in what I call an unforeseeable, unseen war at the moment. Can this end into physical war? As we have seen recently by comments from President Biden after some of the attacks, certainly, in the worst case, this could happen. Would we like to see it? By all means not. Is there a probability this can happen? Yes, there's a probability. And we should not underestimate such a probability. Where are we going when it comes down to technology? Where is the risk going overall? Digitalization, the digitalization world in itself, by 2025, which is only 4 years from now, is a $1 trillion+ sensor economy. There will be more and more sensors linked to each other. We're talking about Internet of Things, Internet of everything at the end of the day, which allows us to collect data. Data is the new oil at the end, but a part of the oil we need the machines, and the machines are more and more connected. Where there are more connections to each other, there's more risk to each other, there are more ways to use such risks offensively or defensively at the end. Where is this going to be and end at the end? Nobody knows. But one of the things we truly know about today is we have some pitfalls in our technological setups. Many countries have rather weak infrastructures from the past. They need to have huge upgrades, investments into these infrastructures. The buzzword 5G allows us to faster digest data packages, faster use such data packages at the end of the day. But does it also potentially expose us to more cyber attacks? Well, certainly in the bridge between from the old systems and the new, it will. But where does it lead? It leads into the aspects of just more denial of service attacks. Does it lead into more ransomware attacks, as we have seen over the last couple of months? Or does it lead into the use of what I call artificial intelligence, attacks in AI? I personally believe cyber warfare in itself is going to be one of the key weapons in future, one of the key aspects in the form of offensive aspects. I wouldn't be surprised if we go beyond what I call denial of service attacks by weaponizing, at the end of the day, AI capabilities in the form of potentially manipulating thermostats from one country to the other in a very hot winter, for instances, or even thinking about, would it be feasible at the end where we have press conferences, major announcements of corporate companies, CEO announcements, suddenly such announcements are being manipulated? Without any doubt, technology offers a lot of upsides, but a lot of downsides in the form of potential risk. Without any doubt, on the other side, from my point of view, the upside is where we should go, where we should think about primarily. But we should never, never neglect potential downsides as far as cyber risk are concerned. Cyber risks, codes, software, they go hand in hand with the digitalization. Never before the circumstances, the political environment has been more in attention than we are right now. Never before the probability of a cyber warfare has been bigger today. That leads to the fact that cyber risks are certainly a risk which fundamentally will be challenged over the next couple of years. We will see development when it comes down to data regulations. We will need to go towards what I call a global data regulation rather than state-owned data directives. There must be enforcements across borders, much closer work together when it comes down to cybercrime at the end of the day, fighting cybercrime. We'll see developments as far as regulatory fines are concerned. And this is the way which I believe is very important. But we should not, and we should never over-regulate a digitalization, because if we are over-regulating, we're also hindering, we're stopping the development potentially of specific developments which are absolutely crucial for the next generations we have around the world. Can you be fired if your company
very
gets
challenging
hacked?
times for Target. I can tell you that it's a real punch in the gut. We know that our guests' trust in us is shaken, and we're going to learn from this experience and work really hard to become even a better retailer over time.
The big question is when shoppers will feel safe coming back into the stores. Greg Steinhoffel says that as of Friday, shopping trends were almost back to normal. But of course, that was before the latest admission that personal information for up to 70 million shoppers was also compromised.
Shares of Target are slipping on Monday after the retailer announced its chairman and chief executive Greg Steinhoffel is stepping down 5 months after the massive customer data breach that took place.
This is one of my favorite cases. It already happened in 2014. 2014, when you spoke to boards, and I do talk a lot to boards around the world, to organizations around the world, 2014, I called it trying to demystify the fact around cyber. Many board members thought at that moment in time, cyber risk, that's something for IT security. They never thought about their fiduciary duties. They never thought about the interaction between digitalization and cyber. Now, this was the first wake-up call when the CEO of Target got fired. We saw numerous cases afterwards, but this is really a prime case for me when the world started to be shaken for the first time of a CEO get fired under a cyber attack at the end. No doubt, cyber risks today are, without any doubt, a fundamental board topic. Any board underestimating the understanding of cyber is a board which might not be in place for long. Without going into details when it comes down to cyber risk at board level, make sure you do have an appropriate representation of IT security at board level. If you don't want to do that, have at least a sponsor when it comes down to IT security. The interaction between the board, the crisis management team, legal, PR, when it comes down to a significant cyber attack, is fundamental. It has never been more fundamental than it is today.
This is a message to the board of NewCo. We control your passwords, servers, domains, and client database. You have 24 hours from now to pay €5 million in Bitcoin. Otherwise, hell will break out for you. Contacting the police will result in the wiping of your entire database. The wallet address can be found in the attached message.
This is the reality. It's not anymore the 18-year-old teenager somewhere from the garage which is trying to make such attacks in the form of a ransomware attack. Ransomware attacks have become highly sophisticated. They're targeting key personnel in companies, very often executive boards, CEOs at the end, via social engineering, or for instances, obviously try to apply tactics such as authorized push payments at the end, where money is being released or where there are ransom or there is extortion in place. And it's important to stress test such circumstances, not by desktops at the end, but by real circumstances at the end of the day. That's the direction which people should go. Where does it leave us? How costly can it be if we underestimate such circumstances? This is an example which I would like to show you briefly. When you have a major cyber attack, there are fundamental challenges. These fundamental challenges as a company go hand in hand with survival of a company. We normally talk about 3 phases of a specific incident. These 3 phases unfolded are very much along the lines of the initial attack. The initial attack is really the incident itself. A lot of people, many boards do believe the costs are the highest at the beginning. The costs are not the highest at the beginning for forensic criminal investigation or notification processes you have. But these initial 2 days, 3 days are decisive. We have seen this recently in the case of the Colonial Pipeline hack, for instance. If they would not have acted so quickly as they did within the first couple of days, the implication on the supply chain would have been massive. The implication of the business interruption would have been even more exponentially higher. and the implication on the reputation of the company would have been disastrous. So what I call normally the impact of management is really a decisive factor. The impact of the management means very much on bring the board to the table, bring the task force to the table, use what you have exercised previously before, so hence prepare the third phase, which is the business recovery. Many companies I've seen in such circumstances will still suffer. They will suffer from aspects such as churn rates, customers leaving. They might not be in the position actually to bring back the business quickly. Overall, the experience of a massive cyber attack when it comes down to incident management is anywhere between 9 and 15 months at the end of the day. Now, a lot of people think it's two types of companies, the one who had even not been hacked yet, or the one who will be hacked in the future. I'm coming more from the angle nowadays that I believe most companies have been already compromised. Many companies are not aware they have been compromised. And hence, what is fundamental going forward is to take certain lessons, to think about how can you proactively identify risk, quantify risk, and most importantly, mitigate or control this type of risks. Let's look briefly into such developments. The lessons learned we see from a compromise, the 4 ways how you can look at the defense, and the way you can try to identify specific exposures going forward. One is obviously, there's a lot of open source threat intelligence. There's data around, there's data out about companies, individuals at the end of the day. Obviously, this kind of data might be old. So a lot of companies I'm working with, they're looking at behavioral assessment of threat actors, certain threat actors, whether they're state-linked or they're private, they're focusing on industries, strategic industries. So for instance, critical infrastructure, we see certain actors focusing on certain type of industries at the end. You can obviously do so-called active threat intelligence advisory, which is very much trying to monitor the traffic which is coming into. Most important from my point of view is to learn out of the IOCs, the incident of compromises from the past. How have you been attacked? What lessons have we learned about it? How have we assessed these particular lessons? What lessons have we taken out and put them into place as solutions going forward? So overall, where I would like you to leave here today is very much around 3 things. Number 1, cyber risks are truly global risks. Cyber risk can hit any type of company, whether you're a small company, whether you're a large Fortune 500, doesn't matter. Often a decision is made based on the intent of the actor, whether the intent is really just to gain economic aspects or political aspects or military aspects. So we'll see different type of actors. The second point which I truly believe into is this type of risk will always remain a board risk. The board has a responsibility and has a fiduciary duty to respond on cyber risk, but most importantly, to identify potential cyber risk, quantify them, and address them. By combining 1 and 2, I strongly believe that companies will remain on the front foot. See cyber risk not just as a threat, but also as an opportunity to use new disruptive technologies, such as artificial intelligence, in the defense. It allows us very much to often quicker identify risks, incoming risks, and do true on-time responses, which help us potentially mitigate a true impact on our P&L, a long-term impact on our shareholders, and most importantly, on our colleagues and employees. It was a pleasure to be here with you here today. I'm very much looking forward after this session now to the questions you may have. And in the meantime, I'll leave you with praises to have good health for you. Enjoy the 2021. It's a great time to be out there. It's a great time to address digitalization with great opportunities, but watch out about cyber risk. They can truly be what I called a Damocles sword over your head. Make sure this Damocles sword is not falling on your head. Have a great day. Thank you very much. Good.